Hello, second grade. This is Mr. Hunter with your second grade history lesson for today. What you're going to need your history book. Everybody should have this. We made sure you took it home with you, so you should have it, and you're going to turn to page 112. We are going to be starting a series talking about American pioneers, or I should say America's pioneers. So 112 to 118 is your lesson for today. We'll be introducing some new states: Kentucky, Mississippi, Virginia, Tennessee. And then those are on the back right there. We're also going to talk about a few things considering the Mississippi River, how that affects what we're discussing. Pioneers. Do you know what a pioneer is? If not, it's okay, but we're going to discuss that today. We're going to talk about a man named Daniel Boone and then Cherokee Indians. These are some of the facts that we'll be talking about, not only today, but tomorrow and in history lessons in the coming days, all right? So America's pioneers. I will be reading an introduction right now. So all I need you to do is be focused, get your thinking cap, and get ready to work, all right? When America began, most of the people that were in America, they were settling, I should say, along the coast of the East Coast. So states like New York, Pennsylvania, and New Hampshire, Boston, Massachusetts, where Mr. Hunter is from, Washington, D.C. I was born in D.C., but I also lived in places like Maryland, and I lived in Virginia. I went to high school in Virginia. So those are right around DC, but that's all on the East Coast. And a lot of people lived there. But since there were so many people there were some people, some men, some women who wanted to move to a place where it wasn't as busy, where there weren't a lot of people. And one of those people that we're going to talk about today, his name was Daniel Boone. He decided that he was going to go west. And if you're looking at a map straight in front of you, the east is on the right and the west is on the left. Okay, so that is what we're talking about. He wanted to go left. Now, he didn't make it as far west as we live in California, but he stopped in a place that he really liked, and that state is called Kentucky. You today are going to get a pretty cool worksheet about Kentucky. It has a lot to do. It gives you a lot of facts. You're going to be able to color it, and you'll learn more about the state itself, the state flower, the state capital. But you're going to get that worksheet today. I'll send it to you. All right. So now we're going to start on page 112. It's called America's Pioneers. And look at the picture. You see some cattle. You see a wagon. Pretty cool, right? You see the wheels. All of these things were handmade. If they didn't build these themselves, these wagons, they weren't fast, but it beat walking. If they had to walk all these places, wow, do you imagine how much pain, how much wear and tear they put on their bodies, how long it would take? Those are pretty cool things that we see that they've done all themselves. So they had horses, they had buggies, they had wagons, and we're going to see even more information about who these people were. All right, so let's look at page 113. Our vocabulary word is pioneer. Everybody say pioneer. Pioneer. And we'll find out more about that. All right. So over 150 years ago had passed since the Pilgrims settled in New England. During those years, many more people sailed to America. Big cities such as Boston, Philadelphia, and New York were growing bigger and bigger. But why didn't some people move west? Well, hardly anything was known about the West, and many people were too afraid of Indians to move west. But some men, they felt extremely crowded. They wanted to move on. They wanted to be surrounded by trees and land instead of people and buildings. And these men who dared to move westward were called pioneers. So there we have it. Our first vocabulary word, it tells us right there. People that wanted to move westward and were really bold and adventurous, they were called pioneers. Let's turn the page and find out what a pioneer is. Page 114. A pioneer is a person who goes first and clears the way for others who will follow. Wow, that's a pretty cool definition. Who thinks they're a pioneer? Who thinks that they go first and other people will follow? We call that a pioneer. We also call that being a leader. If some of you guys have any relatives or friends that are in the military, there's a group in the military, they're called the Marines. There's a branch called the Marines. The Marines are known for going first. They are the first to go out into battle, and that's why we would call them pioneers as well. So pioneers is a person who goes first and clears the way for others who will follow. That's a big job and a lot of responsibility. All right, we'll keep reading. The first pioneers were men who traveled alone. Most of these pioneers walked. Some pioneers had mules to carry the things that they owned. And what was the pioneer's main possession? His gun. And that was really important because with his gun, he could shoot his dinner and protect himself from wild animals and Indians. Soon, Whole families wanted to move west. Wow, so a pioneer had a lot of responsibility. They were the first people to go, so there was no path for them. They had to make the path. There was a lot of danger. There's animals, there's things you don't know about. Imagine walking out into a forest and you don't have any path. There's no sidewalk. You just have to walk and figure it out. You could get in a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, a lot of trouble with snakes, all types of animals, things that are out there. But these men were so brave and they had to do it. Guess what? With only the light from the moon and the light from the sun. They had to do it with just their gun to protect them. And guess what? They did it by themselves. Nobody was able to do it for them. They had to walk. They didn't even ride horses. And the few people that did have horses, they had to put their stuff they took on top of the horse. So this was a really brave job. You see that picture down there? That's what it looked like, that man right there. He's walking with his horse and he has his gun and he's dressed. Wow, God really kept them. So let's look at page 115, a pioneer of pioneers. In 1775, the land that makes up Kentucky was bought from the Cherokee Indians. At that time, Kentucky was a wilderness of thick woods, Indians, and wild animals. How could pioneers with families travel through this wilderness? At this time, Daniel Boone became one of America's first great pioneers. Led by Daniel, 30 men with axes chopped a rough path from Virginia to the mountains of Kentucky. This rough path through forest and over mountains became known as the Wilderness Road. As the years passed, thousands of pioneer families traveled west. Wow, so because of Daniel Boone, he was so brave. He had to chop through the mountains and rough patches. All they had were axe and their guns, maybe little tiny knives, but he had to chop through that. And then it says he chopped through the mountains. So he's not even doing this on the flat ground. He's doing this high above the ground in the mountains, above the air. You think that's dangerous? You think that's pretty scary? I think that's scary. I don't know if I would have been able to do it. But guess what? He had to do what he had to do. You see the pictures right there. The men are chopping down the really big trees with the axes. And then you have the vocabulary words at the bottom. We have Kentucky, Cherokee Indians, Daniel Boone, and Virginia. All right. And as I mentioned, Virginia is a place that's a pretty cool place if you've never been. I went to college in the south of Virginia, which is 3 hours from Washington, D.C., and Virginia, where I went to high school. Okay, so Virginia is a pretty big state too. All right, let's turn the page. All right, westward ho is the top of this. The vocabulary words that we have at the bottom are California. Hey, do we guys like that? I like that word because that's where we live. California is our home. We have wagon train. Everybody say wagon train. All right, everybody say wagon master. Wagon master. And last but not least, everybody say journey. Journey. All right, westward ho. The new country these pioneer families moved to had no sheriffs or laws. There were no stores or doctors, and they had to depend upon themselves and their creator. So they had to have faith in who? In God, and they had to have faith in themselves. They had to have a lot of courage. You have to have courage to take the first step. Did we have enough brave people to spread across America from the east all the way to California? Yes, thousands of families wanted to be pioneers, and many families decided to travel together in wagon trains. Together, they could help each other in time of trouble. So even in the Bible, it says when 2 or 3 are gathered or more, there I will be when they call on my name. And I may have messed up the end of the scripture, but what that really means is that you can do something by yourself. But if you have somebody else to help you, you'll be better off. And if you have a third person, you'll even be more better. Or you not more better. You understand what I'm trying to say. Pretty much all these families, they knew that they wanted to go west, but they couldn't do it by themselves. They needed help. And so they traveled together, and that was a really big thing. Really, really helped them out a lot. Okay? A wagon master, everybody say wagon master. A wagon master was chosen. He was a man who made the long trip before. So this person who was chosen to be the wagon master, they had already been, and they came back to get more people. So they had experience. They knew the bumps in the road. They knew what to look out for. That was a smart decision they made. He knew the dangers of the trip. He knew where to hunt for food and water along the way. And it was his job to safely lead the families of the wagon train on their journey. Well, let's look at page 117, because if you're going on a journey, you might need something to take with you. And it says, what did the pioneers take with them? Well, the pioneers, they took bags of flour and cornmeal, as well as coffee and salted slabs of bacon were loaded into the wagons. How many people love bacon? Maybe I'm just raising my hand myself, but I love bacon. All right. They couldn't forget the cooking kettle and the coffee pot. So if you brought the bacon but didn't bring the cooking kettle, you wouldn't be able to have the bacon. That's not good. They would need to build a house, so they must pack an axe and nails. So guess what, guys? You know how blessed we are? We live in houses that we didn't even build. If you live in an apartment, did you build your apartment? No. But these people, they had to not only travel, they had to build their own house. Wow. So it is a blessing. I'm so thankful to God that I didn't have to build my apartment. I just pay the money and I could walk right in. All right. Let's look what else they had. Farmers would take a plow to plow the ground, and they needed seed to plant in their gardens. There were no stores to stop at along the way, and there would be no place to buy supplies. If food ran out, the family would go hungry. And if they forgot warm clothing and blankets, they might become sick. Food, warm clothing, and blankets could not be forgotten. Those are so important. If it got really cold and you got sick, you might not be able to recover because there's no doctors out there. There's nobody to help you when you're in the wilderness trying to travel, right? So this was a really, really, really hard and dangerous trip that these guys were taking. All right, let's turn the page. Last page here. After all these things were packed, there was hardly any room left in the wagon for other things. Many women wiped tears from their eyes as they gave away their pretty dishes and furniture. And now there were other things to decide. Farmers had to decide how many cows to take along. They either gave someone the job of herding them, or they tied their cow to the back of the wagon. The men had to choose the animals to pull their wagons, and most pioneers, they chose oxen instead of horses because an ox is much stronger than a horse. So you see here in the picture, everything they're packing up the wagon. The husband is helping his wife as she is emotional because she's having to get rid of some things that she wanted to take. So this was not only a long, hard, dangerous situation where they had to travel. This was really difficult for people because they had to give up things. You had to start all over. But if these people did not make the trip, do you think we'd be living in California today? California might still be a place where nobody knows about. Kentucky, where Daniel Boone went, it would be a place where nobody knows about. So we learned about pioneers. The Cherokee Indians owned all the land in the Midwest, but they sold it for some money, and that's how people were able to start moving. And then Daniel Boone and his friends, they had to chop down trees and go up a mountain just to make a path from Virginia all the way to Kentucky for their new home. All right. And then people, could they take everything with them? No. So if you have your favorite toy, your favorite basketball, maybe your video game system, maybe some clothes, if it doesn't fit, would you be able to take it? No, you would only be able to take the most important things. So I want you to think about that. What is the most important thing that you would have to take? If you had to go somewhere and you could only take 5 toys or 5 things, what would you take? Would you take clothes? Would you take food? What animal would you have to actually drag your wagon or drag it? You know, what state would you want to go to? I know we live in California now, but if you lived all the way on the East Coast and there was nothing out there, where would you want to go? Would you trust the person, or would you want to stay in a big city? Would you want to go through the wilderness, or would you say, no, I'll stay here and I'll be in the overcrowded place? These are decisions that these people had to make. And I want you to think about that. All right. In addition to that, you have your book, and this is what we're going to do. You have the questions. It says, do you remember? So this is what we call, you have to remember what we're reading through the story. I want you to take a piece of paper and number from 1 to 5. You're going to answer the questions that they ask you. But guess what? All the answers are in the story that we just read. You have to go back and find them. You can go back and listen to my video and hear me say it again. But it's your job to find the answers, all right? I hope you do well. Thank you for tuning in to History, and I'll see you tomorrow.